more into Deadpool and Wolverine. Came out over the weekend. Before I give my thoughts, get more into my thoughts and opinions, I do want to bring up two things here. First thing I do want to bring up is the Rotten Tomatoes score. Because, it's always good to see how people think about these movies. So here is the Rotten Tomatoes score for Deadpool and Wolverine. As you can see, it's sitting at a 79% critic score and, of course, a 97% audience score. And generally, people like this movie. Critics seem to, think it's pretty decent. And of course, audience scores are going to love this movie because, as we get into it, there's more cameos. There's a bunch of Easter eggs, references, really fan service type of stuff. And usually, if both the scores are high, it's worth a watch. If you have seen the other Deadpool movies and appreciate the X-Men and the Fox universe, then this movie is definitely worth the watch. And if you have never seen Deadpool movies or anything else, then I would suggest not watching. Another thing I do want to point out before we, discuss plot and details is this article from Variety. Box office Deadpool and Wolverine Marvel hits 96 million opening day, 6th highest of all time. So this movie is killing it in the box office, and that is a huge deal for Marvel and the MCU because, this movie is technically under Disney's ownership. And they haven't been hitting, out of the park home runs here in the past, probably since Endgame. Since No Way Home, they haven't been hitting out of the park movies. And this is a huge deal, not only because, it's becoming profitable, but also because it's rated R. And I know a lot of people were concerned about this movie being rated R, if it will be successful or not, because typically rated R movies don't do so well because obviously kids aren't allowed in the theaters unless they get their parents' permission or some shit like that. But who checks IDs at theaters anyway? This box office is going to be important because I think this movie will have legs. It's going to, keep getting word to mouth. And I think a lot of people are going to go see it, next weekend, the weekend after. A lot of people are probably going to see it twice because there are so many Easter eggs in this movie. So what did I think of the movie? What is my review of Deadpool and Wolverine? I grew up watching the old X-Men movies and the old Fox universe. Those were my superhero movies, and Hugh Jackman was my Wolverine. So, of course, I'm going to have the most biased opinion about this movie. All right, this movie is not the perfect movie. It is not the Oscar-winning story of the year. It is a fun fan service movie, and in my opinion, it's what the MCU needed during this time. It's what they hoped it would be. It is a fan service. If you grew up watching those Fox movies like I did, then you will enjoy this movie. You will get the jokes, you'll get the references, and it's made for us. It's made for those people. And it's kind of like a big love letter to those movies. Not only those old X-Men movies, but those old 2000 superhero movies where they really didn't know what they were doing with like the costumes and the characters, and all those movies were just silly and fun. So the basic premise of Deadpool and Wolverine follows Deadpool. He's trying to save his universe, and because his anchor being died, which was Logan, the one who died in the 2017 movie Logan, because he died, his universe is slowly decaying. Listen, the story was not its strong suit. If you take time to think about the plot in this movie, you're just gonna ask a lot of questions. But it's really meant for you just to kind of be a background noise to all the excitement, all the action happening on screen. The opening sequence is Deadpool killing TVA agents with Logan's skeleton made out of adamantium, and he is dancing to the Backstreet Boys. Some people might find that a little bit cringy, but now I can't stop singing not Backstreet Boys, it's In Sync. What am I thinking here? Come on, get my boy bands together. It was very entertaining. The choreographed action sequences was cool. I thought it was very well done. And of course, you got that Deadpool humor in there, which is always fantastic. So after this opening scene in Deadpool and Wolverine, I think things kind of slowed down. We see Wade, what he's doing now. He tried to interview with Happy Hogan to be an Avenger, but obviously that failed. He's trying to sell cars, and of course there's this running joke that I thought was hilarious about the Honda Odyssey being the shittiest car ever. There's some jokes like that, some running jokes throughout the movies that kind of hit for me, and then there's other just dumb and crude humor that you just kind of don't laugh at. So the jokes, I would say most of them hit, but some of them, they just don't, and it's kind of cringe. Oh, the Wolverine montage. So we got to see comic book accurate height of Wolverine, which was 5'3". That was hilarious. And then we got I think Apocalypse Wolverine. I'm not the biggest comic book fan here. I kind of get all the references. I don't. But we got to see the one without a hand. I think that's Apocalypse Wolverine. I don't know. People are going to correct me if I'm wrong. I just saw him, which is kind of like this 80s style Wolverine with big hair. We got to see what's the brown and yellow suit Wolverine, and we got to see the Hulk, which was kind of a cool reference. We got to saw Patch. Even though we didn't see him for that long, we got to see him. We got to see the Wolverine that gets spiked on the big X, which was insane visual. All of these were insane visuals, because they really kind of went with especially the comic book ones, they are insanely comic book accurate. And it's nice to see the production team, especially with those costumes, I thought was nice to see, because it shows they care. They show, hey, these fans want to see this. This is probably going to be the only and last time they see a Wolverine in, this suit or in this situation. We got to see Old Man Logan, which was pretty cool. The final Wolverine we saw was what Deadpool calls the Calverine, which was Henry Cavill, which was a very nice surprise. I didn't get this, thing spoiled for me. So when I saw him, I was very pleased, because I think he's a good pick for Wolverine if they decide to go with him in the MCU. But I feel like with the Wolverine character, no one else can play him as good as Hugh Jackman did for all these years. But, I like Henry Cavill a lot, so it was nice seeing that nod. And, there's always rumors about who's playing Wolverine. It would have been awesome if they had, Henry Cavill and Daniel Radcliffe, but obviously they have a bunch of cameos in this, so I highly doubt they had the budget for that. They get captured. They get sent to Cassandra Nova. She, does these weird finger things with people's minds. And this is kind of where we see the fault of the VFX. I feel like visual effects have gone downhill since, the early 2010s. And I don't know if that's because if the industry is too intense, too time consuming now, and they're trying to reach so many deadlines, so they got to put out all these products. But this movie, suffers from terrible visual effects, and there's a couple scenes in here where it just doesn't look good. The fingers thing, I don't know if it didn't look good or if it was the uncanny valley, but man, there was some very obvious CGI effects, and sometimes when Deadpool's flipping around, you can kind of see that's not very polished. And then there's one scene at the end where they're fighting all the Deadpools and they jump out of the bus. Oh man, that was just they look like a video game. If you go and watch the movie again and see them jump out of the bus, I'm pretty sure all of that is done digitally, because Wolverine looks like he's on some sort of PS5 video game cutscene, and it just looks weird. It doesn't look good, and I feel like this is another scenario of hey, we didn't get enough time to polish all of these effects, which is becoming a more and more problem with MCU, not only in the MCU but other movies too. But it's more predominant in the MCU, and there's more stories about that. coming out where, you know, all these artists are saying, hey, we're like given like 10 shots of like insane VFX, you know, insane VFX that are needed, and they don't have enough time to complete them, or they have to meet a deadline, and it's just not doing so well. So either we need to cut the brakes on the VFX, or, you know, get more artists and give them more time. I will say the film is a very nice love letter to those old Fox universes. There is even like a little montage and during the credits where they play like clips behind the scenes of all the Fox movies and stuff like that. And I feel like this movie, you'll enjoy this movie a lot more if you grew up with those X-Men movies, with those Fantastic Four movies, with those Fox movies, like I did. And, you know, for me, it was a very special movie. Is it the most perfect movie? Is it the most well-written movie? No, but it's enjoyable. And it's probably the best thing Marvel has put out since Spider-Man No Way Home. And like I said in the beginning, it's going to make them a shit ton of money because people are starving for this type of stuff, you know? And, yeah, I think this movie's going to have a lot of legs, and it's going to be special to a lot of people. This movie will hold a special place in my heart just because of the actors and the characters and the stuff I grew up with, you know. It felt like it took them, you know, 20-some years to make this movie. And it's going to be very special. And yeah, that's what I think of Deadpool and Wolverine. And we are officially done with the spoiler talk, people. Let me know what you think of Deadpool and Wolverine, guys. Did you enjoy it? If so, let me know.